My name is Terry Hatmaker. I'm with Saran Systems, and we are going to be going over today contribution history. What is contribution history? We'll look at what it is, where it's used, and how it's created. So first, what is contribution history? Well, what contribution history does, it takes all of your contribution information and it places it in its own table. So it summarizes that detailed contribution information of all of your contributors, takes that summary and puts it into its own table. You can create histories for specific time periods, for specific giving funds, and for specific giving units, or mix them all together for specific time periods and giving funds and giving units. So it gives you some flexibility and it gives you a way of being able to visualize your information. One of the things that's very important, and the reason why we have combined the contribution history with the archiving today, is because history records stay in the database after you archive. And so it's important that you run the contribution history prior to archiving your data, any contribution data out of the system. And the last thing contribution history does, it provides you information so that you can look for longer term trend analysis. And we'll look at some ways that you can do that here in a few minutes. So where is it used? Well, one of the first places you'll see it used is in giving unit records. You'll see a history tab under the giving unit records window. Another area that you'll see it used in is in history comparison report. Here you can see, if you look at, and let me pull up a spotlight here. If you look right here, you'll see report column histories. And so you have an opportunity, you can actually compare up to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different histories, okay? Now, the current history is the totals of everything after the last history was run. So if your last history date was 12/31/18, then your current history is going to be all of 2019 plus everything up to today. Okay. If you've never run histories and all you have is current, that means the current is every piece of contribution detail information you have in your system right up to today. So if you started in 2001,
Need to move? Okay.
If you started in 2001, then you would be, your current history would be from 2001 right to today. So we'll look at this report and see what kinds of things you'll get from it. The next area that you can use your history will be contribution history. And this is under the menu where you go menu, program, contributions, contribution history. Okay, and here in this window, you have some opportunity to look at total contributions, or you can look at your contributions by selected giving funds and so forth. Then you have a table that shows you the information from current right down to whatever histories you have created. And so in this particular case, we have the first 2 items selected here, and you see you have total contributions that were run for those periods, the number of giving units with contributions, the number of giving units without contributions, and this is a thing that you can set whether or not you want to be able to track this, and as well as your average contribution. And this is the average contribution of those who contributed. as well as the average contribution of all giving units, okay? And so you see this, and then you get you can get a graph down here, and that shows you the 2018 as well as your current, and you can see where you are with your histories, okay? And this gives you the totals again for those items that you have selected. You can then print or copy that graph to the clipboard. So what are some considerations when using the contribution history? Well, first thing you have to make sure is that you have all your contributions entered before you run a contribution history. So if you're going to run a contribution history for 2019, you want to make sure that you have all your 2019 contributions entered. Another thing you want to do is make sure all your giving statements have been sent out. Okay, it's kind of like closing a period, if you will, for accounting. You want to make sure you have all your bank recs and stuff done before you close out a period. Well, when you run a contribution history, you want to make sure you have contributions entered and giving statements sent. One of the things to keep in mind too is that you can have multiple history files for the same period. So I could have a history file that is for 1/1/19 through 12/31/19 for all of my giving funds. But then I could also have another contribution history record that is for that same period, all of 2019, but only has the tithe or the general fund giving fund selected. So there's all kinds of combinations, there's all kinds of considerations when you're looking at whether or not you want to use multiple history files. And so, like I just said, you can use these any date range, any set of giving funds you want. Now, when you create these, you can always delete them, okay? But if you delete a contribution giving history that is tied, that was really run because you were archiving out contribution data, you won't be able to go back and rerun that contribution history unless you restore your data. So always be careful to when you're going to delete a contribution history. So let's get out of here and let's just take a look at contribution history. So contribution history, we find it under Program, Contributions, and you see Update History. So Update History is the first thing you have to do in order to get this set right. And so what we're going to do is, you see here we have the last contribution history that was run was 2017, and then there was a gap between 2009 and 2017, okay? So you really don't have, I don't have any history here from 1/1/2010 up to 12/31/2016, because this one is starting in January. And so that means my current history as seen in the system would be from January 1st, 2018 to today. So what are we going to do? We want to add one, and we'll start here by adding 1/1/18. Okay, we're going to call it, well, its description is going to be 2018. And our range will be 1/1/18 to 12/31/18. And since this is a couple years ago, I want to make sure that I'm going to have inactive accounts associated with this. So I'm going to click on this button down here and say show inactives. And so you can see now that there's some inactive accounts coming in. All right. And so I want to say all. So I've selected all of them. And now there are two buttons down here, or two checkboxes. One is called, has the description of skip giving fund with no contributions, and the other one is skip giving units with no contributions. Okay, so skip giving fund with no contributions. If you do that, that means it's going to go through and it's going to look at all of these giving funds and it'd say, okay, this particular giving fund, let's say the air conditioning fund, it doesn't have any contributions in it. So I'm not, if I have this checked, I'm not going to save any history for that giving fund. So if I was to try to run a report showing an AC fund based on contribution history, it would not be available for me to do that. Okay. So this is one that if you really don't, you know that you have some that have no contributions and you don't want to include them, that's fine. I always like to include it. That way I'm just getting everything and I'm showing exactly what happened in the 2018 period. The second item here, skip giving units with no contributions to any giving fund. This is the one, if you remember, I said that you had in your contribution history window where you could view history, there was a column that said number of giving units that did not contribute to anything. And then you also had a total of an average of the contributions for those who gave, as well as a total of an average of contributions for everyone, those who gave and those who didn't. If you check this, then you're not going to see, you won't be able to get a view of your data where you show, here's the average for those who just gave, and here's the average of everyone, those who could have given as well as those who did. And so you can't really get a percentage and say, an average and say, well, only this percentage, this average gave. We had this average giving of all of the people who could have given. So I would suggest also that you would not check this. Now, you can always check this. I mean, this one is not going to hurt you as much, okay? But I'm not going to skip, I'm going to uncheck that, and I'll show you what this will do, okay? So once you have this set up, you're going to click on Save. And now you have 2018 contribution history in the system. Now let's just go and let's do 2019 as well. And once again, I'll make sure that I have showing inactives and make sure all of them are selected. And let's save. And now for 2019, what I want to do is add just one other one. And I want to call this General Fund Review. 2019. Oh, let's. Oh, you have a limit to characters. So we'll just do it that way. And now I'm going to say 1119 to 123119. And I'm going to say none here. And what I'm going to look for is my 2019 general fund. And now I'll click Save. And so now this particular item only has this giving fund associated with it, whereas this one is pulling over a history for all the giving funds. So this way we can see what we have. So with that done, we'll close our update contribution history. And let's go into contributions and let's go to giving unit records. And so here's a history tab. And now we see that here's the current, which would be from January 1st, 2020 forward. Okay, and then here is the one for the general fund only. Okay, so we see there's, and it even says general fund review, okay. And if I hold down my command key on a Mac or control key on Windows, I can select the 2019, And you see now I have two columns here. And so here's the general fund, and here's the one that has all of the different funds. And you can see there was a lot of zeros. Now, if you have a lot of funds that aren't being used, then coming over into the update history window for this one and selecting skip giving funds with no contributions, that would help. Okay, that could reduce what you see here. Okay, but again, it's not necessary. Now, if I come and look, let's go back to Manning, and we can look at 2018 and look at 2007. Okay, and we see more going across the board here. Okay, so this is a real quick, easy way that you can look at your information, and you can look at as many columns as you want. And you can enter as many columns as you want. So that means over here, you can have as many contribution histories as you wish. Okay. And like I said, you can delete, but if I come in and I at some point archive out 2019 contributions, and then so I run the contribution history, get everything set up for 2019, then I archive out my 2019 contributions, and then 2 years from now I decide I don't want the 2019 contribution history anymore, and then I really shouldn't have done that, and you go back, you can't run the history again until you go and restore the contribution data from 2019. So again, another warning. Okay. Now also in contributions, you have view contribution history. And this is the area where you saw the columns. And so right now we're looking at total contributions, and we have these. I'll just make it where we have just the current one selected. Okay. Now, if I hold down my command key and I select 2019 and 2018, now you see both of those are selected. And now let's scroll down and let's select 2008 and 2007 and 2004. Okay, so I've got $151,000 here of total contributions. And we see here that we start off real small at 3,800, and then it goes way down to 235. And then as we go up, now we're up to 73,000 in the bluish purple, and then 68 and so forth. Okay. Now these should have a description here. So we need to get that fixed. All right. Now, if you look at the total selected here, you see the average selected. All right. You see the average contribution. Now, this average contribution is the average contribution of the giving units with contributions. Okay. The average of all giving units is this amount, because see, in this case, it's not including the zero amounts of all of those who didn't give. However, in this one, it is including the zero amounts, and it brings the overall average down. And so that's what you're looking at, and that's why we suggest that you do not skip giving units with no contributions, because it gives you the ability to look at these two items in a very, very distinct way. Now, there's a couple things you can do here. You can look at all of these. You can, if you come in here, you can just take a look at just some of these. Right now I've got that. If I just wanted to review this general 19 one, I could see that, but that doesn't really give you much. Okay. Where you see more than anything is when you are selecting multiple items, and we really need to get that fixed. And so you see the multiple items, but then you can print that graph. Okay, and so I can print it, and there is a bug here. We need to make this larger. We need to have a key here that shows you what these are. But that's one thing you can do, is print this out. Another one is you can copy that to the clipboard. And if I was to open up Pages, say new document, I can then, let me go back, copy graph to the keyboard, and it's not pasting. Okay, so there's another bug, but those two items should bring you where you can copy this information into the system, into any other document that you need. Okay. Now, one other area that I wanted to look at was in the contribution reports. If you look at comparative, you'll see history comparison down here. Now, in history comparison, you see that we have a list of giving funds that's selected, okay? And so this list of giving funds is going to be dependent on the list that you have in your system, okay? But if you remember the one that I had 2019 and only had the general fund 2019, if I was to come in here and I was to select AC fund and then went over into report and selected this 2019 general refund, there's no data in that, because all we're looking at in this case is the general fund for 2019. Okay, so let's make this search more appropriate for us. So let's say we do want to look at the 2019 fund, okay, but what we really want to do is look at 2019, 2018, and 2017, okay? We will look at those funds only. Now, if you remember, 2017, 2018, 2019, we selected all the giving funds. So now what we're saying is, now out of that history comparison that was saved in its own table, take and only find the information for the general funds that we have selected here. So I'll come over here and I'm only going to use those funds, and I'm going to say, okay, now what histories do I want? Well, the histories I want are 2019, 2018, and 2017. And I want to do this by total giving unit. And I want to put the total number of giving units that we have and the averages of this information. So let's refresh this window. And let's expand it out and zoom it up so you can see it better. And I'll make this bigger. So you can see when I'm looking by giving unit, I'm seeing a lot of zeros, okay? Because this is my demo data and there's not a lot of information in here. But we can see that I can see when people gave. I can see if there's any trends in their giving, okay? Too bad I can't show that to you. But then you also see a total here, okay? So like right here, you see Andy, there's 350. So it's totaling the 3 periods that I have selected. Now, if I come down to the end of this report, now I get additional information, the total contributions of each of those periods, as well as the total here. Then it says, well, out of this, in this period, we had 13 giving units that had contributions and 173 that didn't. And again, we see the number of giving units who contributed versus it didn't. And then we have this area right here that says, okay, what is the average contribution for those 13 givers? And this is what it comes up with. But then it says, what is the average contribution for 186 givers? And it's that. So you can get some really good information by understanding now you can come up with a percentage of your gifts that are given by those who actually gave. Okay. So this is a really good report. Now let's go back to search, and we're going to leave it. We're going to change this up a little bit, and we're going to add all here now, and we're going to come into report, and we're going to do total by giving fund. We'll keep the same report histories, and let's see what we get here. So now you can see it's not givers here, it's now listing all of the giving funds. Well, let's change that because that's all the giving funds. Let's go back into the search and let's say clear. And what we want to do is we want to get 2017, 2018, 2019. And then we also want to get the building funds. And we'll include the bus fund. And we'll expand that so you can see. So here's some information. Now you see we're looking at 6 different funds in 2019. Again, it says we have 16 givers to this particular setup, 170 that didn't contribute. Okay, so that's 186 again. Okay, and so now we get to see our average of those who gave versus those who didn't. And again, same way here. And so this is just another way that you can look at it. Notice I did not have to make a specific contribution giving history that had, for like 2019, had the general fund, budget, and building fund in it. And that was it. I just select, if you select all of your giving funds and you save that history for all of the giving funds over that entire period, you can do whatever type of search you want. You can set up whatever search you want based on giving funds and such and periods of time. Okay, so it's always best, I think, to include as many giving funds as you can. Now, of course, if you have old giving funds that no longer are active and you're not using them, great. Just, tell the system over here to skip giving funds with no contributions, okay? Because that just, all that could do is just, it's going to waste, it's going to put zeros in all of those funds, and you're just going to see zeros anytime you run a report like that, okay? All right, so that's the history comparison report. That is updating contributions history and then using that updated history in your work as you progress through the next year. Okay. Now, these contribution histories can be run at any time. Like in this particular case, this one's so specific that I really don't care about it. I'm just going to delete it and say yes. And now that's gone. Now, if I haven't archived anything out. If I want to, I can just come in and add it again. All right. But again, if I've archived any data out, be careful. You have to go back and restore. Okay. So let's